Hare Krishna. Welcome everybody. This is round 2 of wonderful festivities here. Hearing from His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu. Yesterday we had a bit of a program in Russell, and here we continue in Ottawa in our temple. And I'm going to pull it up right here. I didn't do a formal enough introduction yesterday that was warranted really for Devakinandan Prabhu. So I did a little bit of homework here.
The homework.
Yeah. And I thought I would introduce him to you formally. So Devakinandan Prabhu, he started practicing Krishna consciousness in Singapore in 1983. That's a long time ago. 1983. That's like before I was even born. And he was initiated. He was initiated by Mahavishnu Goswami in 1993. He has been the president of the Gita Reading Society, which is kind of like ISKCON Singapore, since 2007, and he is responsible for the maintenance and the development of ISKCON's programs and activities in Singapore under the local GBCs. He also serves as General Legal Counsel for the GBC body. For those of you who don't know what GBC is, it stands for Governing Body Commission, right? That kind of oversees the activities in our International Society of Krishna Consciousness. He also acts as the Global Duty Officer, GDO, for Legal Affairs in ISKCON, Zonal Supervisor for Singapore, member of the Organizational Development Committee, also known as ORDAVE, and member of the GBC Nominations Committee, member Committee of Inquiry relating to International Property Trustee Office, member Committee to Review the CPO, and trustee for Mayapur Vrindavan Trust. He is a practicing advocate and solicitor running his own law firm specializing in international business, company and corporate law, civil litigation, family law, and intellectual property rights, and trademark disputes. He is also an adjunct lecturer of law. So if anybody here is having any legal difficulties or troubles,
Don't come see me. Don't come and see me. I'll pray for you. That's what I was doing.
In just our very short experience of getting to know Prabhu over the last couple of days, he's really a wonderful, sweet devotee. And so we're looking forward to part 2 and hearing what he has to share with us today. So let's give our guest a round of applause.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I like the way Lakshmani Prabhu can't stop laughing. It's so nice to be here with all of you. I never thought I would come to Ottawa. I've been going to Toronto. Sometimes we don't even realize that these cities are here in Canada. No offense. It's just how the way it is. It's like Canberra in Australia. Nobody realizes it's the capital. And we just keep going to Toronto, so it's nice to be here. But I'll say one thing. In Singapore, the atmosphere for devotees is generally at a level where everyone knows everyone. It's a homely atmosphere. And I feel that atmosphere here. So it's very different. The temple president is not giving me a long list of do's and don'ts taking classes. Because sometimes that happens and it really makes everyone nervous. What am I not supposed to say? What am I supposed to say? And Krishna Prabhu and his wife and his 3 musketeers here, they have been so hospitable to me. I'm so happy being with them. They have been really good. And I'm so happy. I've met so many of you over a short period of time, and I've been very inspired by all of you. But my inspiration is Lakshmani Prabhu. She's the reason why I'm here today, actually. So very happy to be here with her. This is spontaneous devotion service. I didn't ask for a clap, but I think it's good that you clapped for me. That's how it should be. There's a nice verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I wasn't sure what to speak on, but I remember reading this verse recently, and I found that the verse was very helpful for me to understand some wonderful qualities of Krishna. And I thought I'll just share it with you today, and we can try to speak a little bit on it. It's in the 4th canto, 30th chapter, and the verse is verse number 28. So it's 4:30:28. So if you have them on your phones, that's good. You can use them. Otherwise, you can hear. I'll try and bring it up. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Yat anusmareti kale.
Yat anusmarete kale.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Yat anusmaryate kale.
Yat anusmaryate kale.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Etavatvam hi vibhubi.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Bhavyam dineshu vatsalai.
Yat anusmaryate kale.
Yat anusmaryate kale.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
Swabuddhya bhadrarandana.
I'll go straight into the synonyms because I don't know how much. What's our timing?
The night is young.
Etavat. Thus. Tvam. Your Lordship. He. Certainly. Vibhubihi. By expansions. Bhavyam. To be conceived. Dineshu. Unto the humble devotees. Vatsalai. Compassionate. Yat. Which. Anusmaryate. Is always remembered. Kale. In due course of time. Swabuddhya. By one's devotional service. Abhadra Randana. O killer of all inauspiciousness. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Please repeat the translation. Dear Lord, you are the killer of all inauspicious things. You are compassionate upon your poor devotees through the expansion of your Archa Vigraha. You should certainly think of us as your eternal servants. Let's hear the purport. The form of the Lord, known as Archa Vigraha, is an expansion of His unlimited potencies. When the Lord is gradually satisfied with the service of a devotee, in due course of time, He accepts the devotee as one of His many unalloyed servants. By nature, the Lord is very compassionate. Therefore, the service of neophyte devotees is accepted by the Lord. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:26, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tad Aham Bhaktya Uparitam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. The devotee offers eatables in the form of vegetables, fruits, leaves, and water to the Archa Vigraha. The Lord, being Bhakta Vatsala, compassionate upon His devotees, accepts these offerings. Atheists may think that the devotees are engaged in idol worship, but the fact is different. Janardana, the Supreme Lord, accepts bhava, the attitude of service. The neophyte devotee engaged in the worship of the Lord may not understand the value of such worship, but the Supreme Lord, being Bhakta Vatsala, accepts his devotee and in due course of time takes him home. In this connection, there is a story about a Brahmana who was offering sweet rice to the Lord within his mind. The Brahmana had no money, nor any means of worshipping the deity, but within his mind he arranged everything nicely. He had gold pots to bring water from the sacred rivers to wash the deity, and he offered the deity very sumptuous food, including sweet rice. Once, before he offered the sweet rice, he thought that it was too hot, and he thought, oh, let me test it. My, it is very hot. When he put his finger in the sweet rice to test it, his finger was burned and his meditation broken. Although he was offering food to the Lord within his mind, the Lord accepted it nonetheless. Consequently, the Lord in Vaikuntha immediately sent a chariot to bring the Brahmana back home, back to Godhead. Thus, it is the duty of every sincere devotee to accept the Archa Vigraha at home or in the temple and worship the form of the Lord as advised in authorized scriptures and directed by the spiritual master. Jai Shri Prabhupada, Transcendental Purpose Ki. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Svapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Tadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasya Evacha Paditanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a prayer chanted by the Prachetas. And the Prachetas in Srimad Bhagavatam were very powerful. They were very powerful because they were a group of brothers who came together, and on the strength of following the orders of their father, King Prachinabarhise, they went to perform great austerities. As they were about to perform austerities, they had the great fortune of meeting Lord Shiva. And Lord Shiva is a great devotee of the Lord. And so he, being very kind and compassionate, actually gave them the opportunity to hear beautiful prayers that he personally chanted and instructed them to chant. And these prayers glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Prachetas, armed with these beautiful prayers, entered into a deep lake. And there they spent many years trying to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They were guided by the beautiful mantras and the prayers chanted by Lord Shiva. And after that, when they came out, they were so fortunate because they actually had darshan of the Supreme Lord himself. Krishna came and he was very pleased with the combined effort of the Prachetas in wanting to glorify him. And at that point of time, Krishna expressed that he would give them all benediction because they were united in their devotional service to the Lord. And so then the Pracheta starts singing beautiful prayers to him. And this is one of the prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam. In this prayer, what is really nice in this prayer is actually that the Prachetas address Krishna in very important ways that will help us to understand his nature and also help us to understand how we can improve our devotional service in the context of understanding the qualities of Krishna. If you read the verse carefully, the first thing the Prachetas say to Krishna is that Krishna, you are the killer of all inauspicious things. And in the word-to-word transliteration, the words that are used are very beautiful. Abhadra Randana. Abhadra Randana. O killer of all inauspiciousness. So this is a very important quality of Krishna, because inauspiciousness is actually any situation or activity where we are actually given the fortune of remembering the Lord, but we don't take that opportunity to do so. Sometimes inauspiciousness also means a situation where we are completely forgetful of our true situation and our true constitutional position in relation to Krishna. In the material world, the word inauspicious and auspicious have a very different connotation. Sometimes people look at the stars and they look at astrology and they say this is an auspicious time and that is an inauspicious time. But we must remember that when Krishna descended into this world, factually speaking, all the stars were not actually in the best or auspicious positions. But the moment they understood that the Supreme Lord was descending to the world, they all lined up to create a wonderful spirit of auspiciousness. This is important because Krishna is not subject to an auspicious atmosphere for him to appear. Whenever Krishna appears in our hearts, whenever Krishna appears when we chant his name, that time when we are performing Krishna consciousness or any devotional activity, that is actually considered auspicious. Otherwise, in this material world, what is auspicious for me may be very inauspicious for you, and it is very subjective. You know, there's a very nice example of the Emperor Akbar, and then you have Birbal. You must have heard of these wonderful occasions between Akbar and Birbal. And there was one time when Akbar was moving around the kingdom, he came out of his gates and he started walking down the street. That day, Birbal was not around with him, and his other ministers were with him. As Akbar started walking down, he looked at a shoemaker, and the shoemaker was repairing shoes. He was a cobbler. Now, the more he looked at him, Akbar became fascinated by the way he was actually cobbling the shoes and repairing them. But he forgot as he walked that he was walking towards a pillar, and his head and his face bumped into the pillar. So at that point of time, Akbar was hurt because he had hurt his face. Now in those days when the emperor was hurt, it was a very, very serious thing. Even if it was a mosquito bite, it was taken to high levels of emergency. Now the ministers came together, and when they looked at their emperor, they asked him, what has caused this calamity that you have bumped yourself into a pillar? And Akbar said very innocently, I was just looking at the cobbler and I bumped into the pillar. And immediately the minister said, the reason for this great inauspiciousness of you forming a bump on your head is actually the cobbler. Therefore, the cobbler should die. He should not live. If he continues to live, it will be very inauspicious for the kingdom. Just by looking at him, O Akbar, you have actually become injured. How inauspicious he must be. So the poor cobbler was put down on the list of people to be hanged. I think in those days they had quite a list going on. And what happened was, the next day, Birbal came back, and as was customary, he looked at the list, and he was surprised at the bottom of the list, there was the cobbler. So he turned to Birbal, Birbal turned to Akbar, and asked this question, my dear Lord, why is the cobbler on the list to die? What heinous crime has he committed? And then Akbar said, oh, this one is very inauspicious. I was just walking and I looked at him, and after looking at him, I bumped into the pillar. We cannot have inauspiciousness in the kingdom. And then after that, Akbar said, Birbal, is there anyone else you want to put on the list? And Birbal said, I just have one more name actually. And he wrote the name and gave the list to Akbar. Akbar looked and he saw his own name on the list. And Akbar said, what is the meaning of this? I know you can be a court jester, but this is taking too far. Tell me why my name should be there. And Birbal said, my dear Lord, the cobbler you just saw the cobbler and he's going to hang. Right? Because you bumped yourself into it. The cobbler had nothing to do with you and he is going to hang. How inauspicious you must be to him. And how inauspicious you must be to the kingdom. That even people who have nothing to do with you are going to hang because of you. Therefore, I think you deserve to be hung. And Akbar understood the point. That what was auspicious for him may not be auspicious for someone else. So actually in the material world, this Abhadra Randana cannot apply. Because in this material world, we see inauspiciousness and auspiciousness along the lines of rituals, along the lines of karma kanda, along the lines of our own speculative ideas. But when we take up Krishna consciousness, we should be very clear that the most auspicious activity is always to remember Krishna. This is very important, that we always remember Krishna and that we never forget Krishna. So that is the true meaning of being auspicious. And sometimes devotees believe that whenever Krishna is invoked, then there is always auspiciousness. And that is very true. Because when Krishna comes into our lives, you all know from personal experience how your own lives have changed. Even if your lives have been challenging, without the presence of Krishna, we will not have the tolerance, we will not have the capacity to tolerate the difficulties in our lives. So actually, in all ways, Krishna personally destroys inauspiciousness. Very important. When Lord Ram was in exile, he was actually in the forest between Chitrakoot and Dandakaranya. And you all know when he went there, he realized that there were so many auspicious sages and devotees sitting down and performing a lot of yajnas because it was Dwapara Yuga. But the thing is, he also realized that they were constantly being harassed by all these demons and demonic forces. And these demonic forces created inauspiciousness because they blocked the flow of devotional activities. And therefore, when Lord Ram saw that, he became the killer of inauspiciousness. He became the killer of inauspiciousness. And he and Lakshman literally killed all these demons. So therefore, wherever devotees are in a situation where we are faced with inauspiciousness, we should always remember that Krishna is Abhadra Randana. That is one of his great qualities out of many other qualities. We do not have to find material solutions to create auspiciousness in our lives. In fact, the material solutions to material problems, Prahlad Maharaj says in 799 of Srimad Bhagavatam, is very often more dangerous and more troublesome than the actual problem itself. Dukkha-shadam tadapi dukkha matadhyayam bhuman vadami vadame tavadasya yoga. He says very nicely, my Lord, therefore I have concluded that factually speaking, whatever material remedies we find to try and remedy the inauspiciousness in our lives, factually those solutions are more problematic than even the problems themselves. Therefore, I conclude, my Lord, that the most important activity that we should do that will resolve all problems in life is simply to perform and render devotional activities to you. Just render devotional service. That is how we create Abhadra Randana in our hearts. This is the first quality of Krishna. And finally, we should also remember, if you study, what is that shloka? It's 1-17 of Srimad Bhagavatam. There very nicely Shukadeva Goswami tells us, Shranavatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridyandastohi Abhadrani Vidunoti Sruhat Satam. You will see the word Abhadrani. The word Abhadrani is there. And if you look at the word-to-word transliteration, Srila Prabhupada defines Abhadrani as the desire to enjoy matter. So actually, whenever we are cultivating or possess a desire to enjoy matter, that desire to enjoy matter creates inauspiciousness in our lives. That is why he is known as Abhadra Randana. He destroys the material desires that we may have to create enjoyment separately from him. And that's why in that shloka, it is stated that Krishna, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is Paramatma within all our hearts. He is also the benefactor of the truthful devotee. This is so nice. And then Shukadeva Goswami says, Krishna will cleanse the desire for material enjoyment. Because when we chant Krishna's names, the names have the potency to immediately cleanse our hearts of the desire. Not just material enjoyment, but the desire for material enjoyment. There is no point stopping one material enjoyment, but creating a desire for another material enjoyment. Sometimes when we want to stop material enjoyment, we say, just cease the activity. But the desire remains. Is it not so? And the desire will just come out in another form. So you say, stop drinking tea and coffee. Okay, I stop. But let me go and find something else that has caffeine. So technically speaking, I stopped taking tea and coffee. But there's something else I'm taking, and I'm getting the same thing. So therefore, because the desire remains, the material enjoyment just takes a different form. And it creates inauspiciousness in our lives. That's why it is stated that when we perform devotional service, and if it is performed in an unalloyed manner, this unalloyed devotional service has the capacity to actually uproot from the roots this great desire for material enjoyment. Kechit kevalaya bhaktya vasudeva parayanaha. 6.1.15 of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated so nicely that when we perform service to Krishna, Vasudeva Parayanaha. The word-to-word translation of Vasudeva Parayana is very important. It is not only performing devotional service to Krishna, but it is performing devotional service to Krishna without attachment to whatever fruits that are gained through austerity, whatever fruits that are gained through acquisition of knowledge. Therefore, our devotional service must be devoid of these desires. Then we will be able to cleanse our heart of the desires. This is what it means to be Abhagra Randana. This is the understanding of who Krishna is. So that is the first quality of Krishna. The second quality of Krishna that we find here is that he's Dineshu Vatsalai. It's very beautiful. Dineshu means unto the humble devotees. Is the verse up, Prabhu? Is it still up? Could you bring it back? I wanted to demonstrate to you one very important thing when we study Srila Prabhupada's verses and Bhakti and Srimad Bhagavatam. Even if you don't have it, it's okay. But if you have time, you should do this. When you read the translation, right? Okay. When you read the translation, and I'll read the translation again. Dear Lord, you are the killer of all inauspicious things. You are compassionate upon your poor devotees. In the translation, Prabhupada uses the word poor, right? The word is poor. But when you look at the word-to-word transliteration, the closest you come to understanding the word poor is the word dineshu. And when you look at the word dineshu, Prabhupada gives unto the humble devotees. So sometimes people look at the word poor devotees and they think, oh, devotees who are bankrupt, Krishna is very compassionate to them. Or devotees have nothing, Prabhu, give all your bank balance to the temple. You become poor and you will have his compassion. That's not happening here, right? Very good. So sometimes we think that someone is very poor and therefore then Krishna, out of his mercy, he gives compassion. But this is where you will miss out the point of Srila Prabhupada's purports and transliteration. Because if you miss the word-to-word transliteration, we will miss the point of what poor actually means. Poor here means a devotee feels himself to be humble. This concept of poor is not a concept of material poverty. It is actually the concept of humility. When a devotee feels poor, the devotee feels that I may have so many material things, but if I'm bereft of the association and the devotional service of Krishna, then what is the use of having everything else? This is the mood of dineshu. This is the mood of humility. So therefore, always be very sharp not to miss the word-to-word. Whenever you study your shlokas daily, keep a notebook with you and take down, read the transliteration, read the translation, and look very carefully at the words that Srila Prabhupada is writing. He is not giving us these words-to-word transliteration to make us look scholarly or for this to be an act of what we call studying Bhagavatam like a pandita. No, it is meant for us to understand what really is the meaning of what our founder Acharya is conveying to us. And because we don't have that capacity, he has so kindly translated each and every word, and he has given it through realization. Not a direct, literal Sanskrit meaning, but an understanding of what the word actually implies, which will help our devotional service. Now, when you understand that the word Dineshu refers to humble devotees, then we understand now that the Lord is very compassionate, and Prabhupada confirms this in the purport, that the Lord is known as Bhaktavatsal. And because he is Bhaktavatsal, he is the embodiment of compassion to the devotees who have humility in their hearts. That is why humility in a devotee always attracts the compassion of the Lord. This is a very important formula, and it's a very important, there's a deep connection between the humility that is genuinely expressed by a devotee and the compassion that the Lord actually gives and bestows on that devotee. Krishna is actually so compassionate, Prabhupada writes in the purport, that he is so compassionate that even those who do not believe in him, he is still supplying them all the necessities of life. Think about it. Hiranyakashipu had free water, he had free oxygen, and he could still live and breathe. And yet he was terrorist number one. Krishna could have just taken everything away from him and denied him everything. Sometimes we take for granted that we are able to even sit here in good health, and still we have the elements of nature being useful for us, that we can breathe, we can eat, we can drink. And all this is being given by Krishna. It is actually a great indication of his symptom of his compassion. And Krishna is so kind that on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, even those who were inimical to him, they may not have gone back to him, back to Godhead, but those who saw him or even had a glance on him, they were actually given a form of liberation. What more to speak of the devotees who surrendered to him? This is a very important point for us to realize. That is why the Prachetas say, Krishna, you are compassionate upon your poor devotees. How? Through the expansion of your Archa Vigraha. So before we go to that other point, it is very important also for us to realize that not only is Krishna attracted by the humility of a devotee, but he is also very attracted when the devotee has so much opulence at his disposal, and yet he uses everything for the benefit of the Lord. All the great devotee kings, Ritu Maharaj, Janak Maharaj, Bharat Maharaj, you'll find that all the kings, Parikshit Maharaj, they were all great rulers. They were very involved in their order of life. They were much more busier than you and I and all of us put together. And yet, they were always very, very attentive and attracted to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore, even though they had so much material assets, they were in one sense completely detached from them. That's why Kunti Mata prays in her prayers, Janma Aishwarya Shruta Shrivir. This is very important. Eda Mana Madaha Puman. She says that, my Lord, it is very difficult for someone to approach you with feeling. Nai Varhati Abhidhatum Vai. It is very hard to summon sincere and with sincere feelings. It's very difficult to approach Krishna when we are very attracted to Janma, when we think we have high birth, Janma Aishwarya, when we think we have wealth and opulence, Shruta, when we think we are very educated, and Shrivir, when we can't stop looking at the mirror whenever we pass it. So these are all qualifications in the material world. But factually speaking, if they are not used for Krishna's service, they become impediments in the spiritual world. So this is the point. That's why Krishna is known as Tvam Akinchana Gochara. He is actually the property of the materially impoverished. And materially impoverished, again, does not mean that we have no bank balance. It means whatever that we have, we are humble enough to use it in the service of Krishna. That is the meaning of Dineshu. That is why devotees are very opulent, but our opulence is the opulence of devotional service. And the power of devotional service is very powerful. In 3:25:38, I think, I'm not sure of the verse, 38, but I know it's in the 25th chapter. Kapila Dev tells Devahuti, Na karhinchin mat paraha shanta rupe nang shanti no me nimisho ledi hedihi yeshamaham priya atma sutascha sakha guru suhridam daivamishtam. In that verse, Kapila Dev says, my dear mother, he says, Na karhinchin mat paraha shanta rupe, my dear mother, the devotional opulences of a devotee. And Prabhupada translates that in the purport as bhakti, your devotional service. The devotional service of a devotee can never be destroyed, neither by time, nimisho, neither by any form of weapon, ledi hedihi. No weapon can destroy bhakti, and no time can destroy bhakti. Bhakti is above both the limitations of time and the forces of weapons of any kind. Why? Esham aham priya atma sutascha. Krishna is so pleased with his devotees because they always are having so much of priya. They have so much of love for Krishna. And they always turn to him in so many different relationships. Sakha guruho suhrido daivamishtam. Sometimes they take Krishna as their chosen Lord. Sometimes they take him as their friend. Sakha guruho. Sometimes they take Krishna as their spiritual master. So in this way, the devotees are always protected. So the Prachetas are now meditating on Krishna. They started by saying, Krishna, you destroy all inauspiciousness in our lives. Second, Krishna, because you destroy all this inauspiciousness in our lives, you are truly compassionate. And you are compassionate to those of us who are filled with dineshyu, who have humility, and who know that whatever we have actually belongs to Krishna. And this is the mood of Krishna. And if you read Krishna book, and if you read the pastimes of Krishna, isn't it true that Krishna so many times proved to be the embodiment of humility himself? Even though he was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how loving and respectful he was to his parents. He was the perfect son, right? And he was the perfect friend. And he would always be prepared to serve the elderly residents of Vrindavan in the most perfect manner. So therefore, Krishna's humility is actually so attractive. And the residents of Vrindavan, they were completely mesmerized by Krishna. So therefore, humility is a very important component for devotional service. And the humbler we are in our devotional service, the more genuinely compassionate we will also be to living entities. It is our duty to be compassionate to living entities because Krishna has been so compassionate to us. And forget Krishna. What I mean to say is, all of us came to Krishna consciousness because wasn't there some very compassionate devotee who spent time with us, who welcomed us when we walked through the door, who tolerated all the nonsense that we gave them, who may still be tolerating us. Isn't it true? And they tolerated us on the basis of their compassion and the basis of their humility. So you see, all these Vaishnava behaviors and qualities, they're all related. They're all intrinsically related, actually. Therefore, Bhagavatam is not a scripture which is in the sky. It is an eminently practical scripture. And every difficulty that you face, the qualities that Bhagavatam gives us through the prayers that are given by all these great devotees, if we really meditate on these qualities, if we study them scrutinizingly, what is that point? Tachranavan supatan vicharana paro. That is the way to study Bhagavatam. Tachranavan. First we hear, and we hear attentively. Then supatan. Whatever that we hear, we also repeat, and we also speak about, and we put into practice. And vicharana paro. This is very important. We put it into practical application. Actually, vicharana paro means you analyze, and then you contemplate, and then you actually act on it. So every one of us, if we study Bhagavatam that way, then Bhagavatam is not a theoretical science. It will really help us come closer to Krishna. And Krishna is known as Bhakta Vatsal. He is Bhakta Vatsale. he is truly the well-wisher of all the devotees. And this is very important. If you recall, and here the Krishna is described in the purport as Janardana. Janardana. And because he is Janardana, he is also known as Bhava Grahi Janardana. This is a very important point. In the 8th canto, I believe, in the 8th canto, 23rd chapter, 2nd verse, this point is brought up in the purport. Why is the purport important in 8:23:2? Because Bali Maharaj had already been bound, and he was bound by Vasuki. And he was bound because he could not deliver on his promise. Oh, sorry. Bali Maharaj, he was bound by Vasuki, and he could not deliver on his promise of delivering 3 paces of land to Vamandev. And of course, Vamandev transcendently cheated his devotee. And when he became very big, he could only barely step on 2. And there was still 1 more foot remaining. So Vamandev became, again, he challenged Bali Maharaj. And Bali Maharaj was bound. And at that point of time, Bali Maharaj wanted to offer prayers to the Lord. But in the purport it is stated, when Vamandev first appeared before Bali Maharaj immediately wanted to offer him respectful obeisances. But he was unable to do so, Prabhupada writes, because of the presence of Sukracharya and other demonic associates. So what happened? The Lord is so merciful, however, that although Bali Maharaj did not actually offer obeisances, but only endeavored to do so within his heart, within his mind, the Supreme Personality of Godhead blessed him with more mercy than even the demigods could expect. That is why Prabhupada says the Supreme Personality of Godhead is known as Bhava Grahi Janardana, because he only takes the essence of a devotee's attitude. And Prabhupada ends the purport by saying, if a devotee sincerely surrenders to the Lord as the Supersoul in everyone's heart, the Lord immediately understands this. So even though externally a devotee may not be able to render full service, if he is internally sincere and serious, the Lord welcomes the service nonetheless. Thus the Lord is known as Bhava Grahi Janardana, because he takes the essence of one's devotional mentality. This is the greatness of the Lord as compassionate, as the embodiment of compassion. And now, the last quality of Krishna. The last quality of Krishna that is brought up here is that when the Lord is compassionate, he embodies it in his beautiful form of the Archa Vigraha. And it is so nice, and we are so fortunate to have his form today here. When I came in here, I didn't know what to expect. I just knew that the deities were very old. They've been here for years. Is it 40 years, Prabhu?
Next year will be 50 years.
Next year will be 50 years. Amazing. 50 years. I'm sure you're going to have a big celebration.
Yes,
Yes.
we will.
Yes. So you see, this is another form of how the Lord comes. And Prabhupada writes so nicely here, today in our purport, that even if a neophyte devotee does not understand the value of such worship of the Lord, still the Lord, as Bhakta Vatsala, will accept his devotees' offerings. And in due course of time, in the purport, Prabhupada says, the devotee is taken home to be part of the Lord's unalloyed devotees. Imagine, this is the greatness of the Lord. Therefore, worshipping the Lord in the form of Archa Vigraha is not a sentimental activity. It is an activity which is actually very powerful, because the Lord is non-different in his form as Archa Vigraha as he is in the supreme abode. There is no difference. Winston Churchill in Trafalgar Square is an idol. That's an idol. No one's giving him boga in the morning. No one's doing arati for him. He doesn't get Rajbhog at all. And maybe once in a month, the municipality will send someone to clean all the bird droppings off his head. Srila Prabhupada said this. It's in Prabhupada Lilamrita. He said that. He said that Winston Churchill is an idol. But these beautiful forms of Gaur-Nitai, they are factually speaking more alive than you and I. This is something we should understand. Our life will end, but the deities are eternal. They will always be here, and they will always reciprocate. This is the greatness of the deities. And Prabhupada ends the purport today by saying this beautiful, sweet pastime of how the Brahmana had no facilities to offer a big feast. And yet, in his mind, he began offering. And his offering was so intense, and his remembrance and meditation on the beautiful form of their lordships was so powerful that he began cooking a great feast for them, for him, for the Lord. And there was sweet rice as part of the menu. And when he wanted to test the sweet rice, he actually dipped his hand. All that was happening in his mind, mind you. It wasn't happening outside. And when he dipped his hand there, his hand actually got burnt. And yet, it was not physical. So his remembrance of the Lord was so powerful that the experience of offering bhoga to him is actually real. And the Lord is so kind that he accepted the offering. He accepted this offering. This does not mean from tomorrow you stay at home, don't come to the temple and say, everything's happening in my mind. I'm offering to Gaur Nitai, huge Rajbhog is going on, Mangala Arati, I'm there at 3 in the morning, it's all in the mind. And the alarm goes off, no, it's okay, I'm at the temple. Please don't do that. What it means is, we may not have the material facilities, but it is no impediment to our devotional service. That is what it means. If you look at the example of the Lord in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna came in the form of Sakshi Gopal. If you recall, right, the elderly Brahmana and the younger Brahmana were traveling, and they actually went and saw in Vrindavan the beautiful deity of Gopal. And at that time, while they were seeing the deity of Gopal, the elder Brahmana was so pleased by the younger Brahmana's service that he promised his daughter in hand of marriage to him. The younger Brahmana said, be careful what you promise, because you're promising in front of the deity of Gopal. You see, the mood of the devotee is not that this is just stone. This is Gopal, he's here. So whatever you say, you must make good. And the elder Brahmana was, he was happy. He said, no problems, everything will be fine, until he got home. And when he got home, he realized that the family atmosphere was very different. Sometimes we are also caught in that situation, isn't it? We're very fired up in the temple. Once we go home, if our family atmosphere is not very congenial, then, it appears to be a big challenge. But the poor elderly Brahmana was caught in that situation. His son was an atheist. He was very afraid that the whole family would not agree to this poor Brahmana becoming a son-in-law. And the Brahmana gave him a few days, and after it he came and asked him, my dear sir, I am here so that you as a Brahmana would upkeep your promise. And therefore, at that point of time, the Brahmana did not know what to say, right? All he could do was to say that, I cannot recall what was actually happening. And at that point of time, the son who was atheistic came out, and he chased the younger Brahmana away. But the Brahmana came back, and now before everyone, the discussion ensued. And finally, the younger Brahmana said, I do have a witness to what happened. And he declared that the witness is Gopal. And when he did that, many people were thinking, oh, how can this be? Particularly the son of the elderly Brahmana. Because he had no belief that the deity is Archa Vigraha, he thought, this is nonsense. And so at that point of time, the younger Brahmana said that I will bring Gopal as Sakshi. The elder Brahmana agreed immediately, because in his heart he had faith that Krishna will save him from this situation. Now the atheistic person, he had no faith in Krishna. But Prabhupada writes in the purport that Krishna, acting as a super soul, has that amazing ability to align opposing factors into one line. So while the atheist was thinking, yes, I think this is a great proposition, he should go, because Gopal will never come here. How can a deity ever walk? A deity is not even alive. So I will agree. So the basis of his agreement was completely atheistic. The basis of the agreement of the Brahmanas was completely in line with devotional service. And Krishna arranged everything so nicely that the young Brahmana walked all the way to see Gopal. And when he saw the Lord, he spoke to the Lord and he told him of his precarious situation. And Gopal replied. And Gopal said, just go back and tell them that you spoke to me. And the Brahmana said, no one will believe, Because anyone could do that, right? And say, I just spoke to Gonitai, and he just said that, Prabhu, you shouldn't be in the temple anymore. That's not going to work, is it? So then Gopal said, it's all right. Just let them know that I have declared it. And still the Brahmana was not satisfied. And the Brahmana said, you must come with me, Gopal. And then Gopal said that actually there has not been such a matter where the deity can actually walk. And the Brahmana says something very nice. But actually, there has not actually been such occasions when the deity is actually talking. So that means, Gopal, my dear Lord, if you can talk to me, surely you can walk with me. And the Lord thought about it and he thought, yeah, that makes good sense. and the Lord, out of his extreme mercy, he walked for thousands of miles. And when he came right to the outskirts of the village, he stopped. And the rest is history. Because everybody came out. The atheistic Brahmana's son was silenced in his feelings. And Sakshi Gopal, like so many instances of Sastra where we see the deities, he actually exhibited that the deity of the Lord is compassion personified. He is compassion personified. And the Lord is always reciprocating with his devotees. Let me end by sharing with you a beautiful purport that Srila Prabhupada writes in the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, 38th verse. It's the same verse I quoted. Na karhinchin matparaha shantarupe. In that verse, Prabhupada writes a long purport. But in one point, he talks about Archa Vigraha. And he says, Krishna, the Supreme Lord, should be accepted as one's best friend. He will never cheat. He will always give his friendly advice and friendly protection to the devotee. If Krishna is accepted as a son, he will never die. Here we have a very loving son or child, but the father and mother or those who are affectionate towards him always hope, may my son not die. But Krishna actually never will die. Therefore, those who accept Krishna or the Supreme Lord as their son will never be bereft of their son. Now, Prabhupada writes something very interesting here. In many instances, devotees have accepted the deity as a son. In Bengal, there are many such instances. And even after the death of the devotee, the deity performs a Shraddha ceremony for the father. The relationship, Prabhupada writes, is never destroyed. So this is a very important point. And this shows us that the Prachetas end their prayers now by declaring, Krishna, because you are the killer of all inauspicious things, because you are very compassionate upon your poor, humble devotees, and because your compassion is embodied in the form of Archa Vigraha, therefore, the result of all of this is that we are eternally your servants. Another beautiful way to study Bhagavatam is that whenever you read the shlokas, you'll find that as a rule, the first 2 lines of the shloka establishes qualities or establishes a proposition. In the next 2 lines of the shloka, the effect of what we have learned about Krishna or the effect of that proposition is nicely given. Here, you'll find there are 3 qualities of Krishna that are described. And then the Prachetas logically conclude in the shloka that after understanding that Krishna is all this, what should we do? That's the practical point. Now today you have learned so much about Krishna. What will you do with it? Will we just walk away, have prasadam and talk about the weather? Or will we act on it? You see, this is what Bhagavatam is doing. Bhagavatam is telling us in the last line, through the agency of the great devotees of the Lord, they say then, you should certainly think of us as your eternal servants. That is why we are eternal servants of the Lord. So next time if someone asks us, why do you claim to be eternally servants of the Lord? We know immediately from Bhagavatam very clearly, this is why we are eternally servants of the Lord. It is very clear. And today, people want clarity before they take up something. Isn't it true? Everyone wants clarity. If we are wishy-washy about the shlokas, if we cannot give clarity through the verses and through what Prabhupada has given us, we are doing a disservice to this movement. Because people want more. They demand more. Very few people are giving up and joining the temple on the basis of faith. No, they want to understand why these things are there. They want to be convinced. And if we don't study Bhagavatam, if we don't act on Bhagavatam, what can we give them? If I have $5 in my pocket, I cannot give you $6. I can only give you 5. Therefore, these shlokas are not meant just to be studied, but they are meant to be practiced. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, I go to Premanand. Are there questions, comments, realizations? Yes, Prabhu.
In this verse that you mentioned, Shrimvatam Sattvam Krishna, in the English it says that almost everything is true.
Isn't that Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu?
Okay,
Yeah. That's Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu.
I'm gonna ask the question anyways.
Okay.
Why does it say that in that verse? That almost everything is.
I would like to hear Lakshmi Mani Prabhu say something.
They hear me all the time.
I haven't asked you this question.
Huh?
I would like to hear from you what does it mean, almost completely destroyed?
I would say that
It's good, it's working, it's working.
it's working.
Yeah.
It is. We can hear.
I think it's working. Is it working?
Yeah.
I should shut it.
Yeah,
It's good.
we can hear you.
Because by regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class, that does part of the job. The other part of the job is that you have to do something about it.
Yes.
So if you just come to the class and then you pack up your books and go and do nonsense, then the rest of the inauspicious things within the heart will remain.
Very nice. Thank you, Prabhu. Do you see the point, Prabhu? We may be able to study, we may be able to read, but ultimately, even if we hear, we must act on the hearing. Otherwise, it's almost completely destroyed. So the other thing that I also remember hearing, Prabhu, if I can share this with you also, is that because we are also in the material world, as long as we have the sharir, the vestiges of the sharir will always be with us until the sharir leaves us. That's the other thing that's also very important for us to. Do you have something to say on that?
No, I was just, no.
Yeah.
Sharir is body?
Your body.
Body, yeah.
Your body. You will see even the great acharyas, right? Towards the end of their life, even if they're transcendently, they have transcended the pain of the body, but the sharir is still giving problems. It is the nature of this material world. And the acharyas have shown us that this is what happens. Almost completely destroyed. Once the last vestiges of this body and material existence ends, then unalloyed devotional service free of this body can actually begin. Thank you, Prabhu. Please, Prabhu, at the back.
Sometimes I think exactly what we want, it's a curse. Why it's so hard to realize it and understand it?
You're saying that sometimes what we want,
Having received exactly what we want, it's a curse.
yes, you're saying that we may get something, but actually it doesn't turn out to be helpful. It's actually a curse to us. Is that what you're saying, Prabhu?
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it is. We desire for something and we think it will be very helpful for us, but when it comes, it's exactly not what we wanted. So your question is?
Yeah, my question was about our desire.
Okay, yes.
So,
Which is why desires need to be.
our desire.
Yes, which is why desires need to be channeled. If we are not careful with what we desire, because of ignorance, we may desire so many things which have nothing to do with Krishna. And eventually that which has nothing to do with Krishna will just create disturbance. 1.5.14 of Srimad Bhagavatam. Tato anyata kinchana yad vivekshataha. In that verse, very nicely Narada Muni advises Vyasadeva that in this material world, right, what will happen is if you have a separatist mentality, if you decide to do something which is separate from Krishna, that will react with different names, forms, to simply cause disturbance. And it will only create oscillation of the mind. Dushtita matihi. The mind will oscillate and oscillate because that which we desire has nothing to do with Krishna. So yes, your point is very true. We have to be very careful with what we desire. And that's why, instead of always artificially trying to be careful of our desire, better we take up the process of Krishna consciousness seriously and get into the habit that whatever we want, let us check if it is aligned with what Krishna wants. If we don't know what Krishna wants, then it's a good time for us to start reading Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, because whatever Krishna wants is found there. In case we still can't do that, turn to the devotees who are inspiring you. They will help you to understand what Krishna wants. Thank you, Prabhu. That's a nice point. Someone else had their hands raised. Yes, Prabhu.
A little bit of a technical question for Prabhu. Why is it that sometimes Prabhupada would have like a translation in word for word that's a bit different from in the verse translation?
I would defer to Srila Prabhupada's disciple. Well, he raised a very important thing. Just like today, Prabhupada has transliteration with certain words, and the translation, it doesn't come out that way. It has a different flavor. Why would Prabhupada do that? That's the question.
Well, Prabhupada does a lot of things. He has a realization of what Krishna is trying to get across in a way that we can receive that information and it can become valuable to us.
Yes. Yes. I would really be guided by what Prabhu said. Prabhupada understood as an acharya, and the beauty of an acharya is the acharya just doesn't give us something which is linguistically correct.
Also, if you hear from someone who understands Sanskrit, or you look it up in the Sanskrit dictionary, these words have multiple meanings.
Exactly.
And sometimes the acharyas choose one meaning, or a nuance of that meaning. And the English language is very
restricted,
inferior in certain regards. Like there's so many Sanskrit words for friend, right? And each word for friend means something else. Surit means a friend of the heart. Different friends, Bhadra. There's so many different. But in English, everybody's a friend. It's all one. And there's many other words in Sanskrit that have multiple facets. So Prabhupada speaks in multiple facets.
Yes. And I found very often that when Prabhupada chooses to give a meaning to the word, and the word comes out either in the transliteration or the translation, it actually gives a very practical understanding of what the verse is. And it helps us to understand how we can utilize the verse practically for ourselves. I'll give you another example. Look at 2nd Canto, 8th chapter, 4th verse. When you have time, look at it. It's an amazing example of that. In 284, Shranavataha Shraddaya Nityam, Granatascha Swachestitam, Kalena Na Atidirgena, Bhagavan Vishate Vritti. Right? It's 284. Now, when you look at the way it is translated, Prabhu, you got it there? Are you looking at it now? Okay, great. Can you give us the translation to 284?
The English translation?
Yes, the English translation.
Persons who hear Srimad Bhagavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, manifested in their hearts within a short time.
Jai. Now, can you go to the word-to-word transliteration? And you'll see the word. Could you repeat the Shranavata, Shraddaya? Could you look at Shraddaya?
Yeah, in earnestness.
Shraddaya is earnestness. Now, this is exactly what Lakshmi Mani Prabhu was saying. Generally speaking, if you look at the dictionary, Shraddha, the root of Shraddha is faith, right? It is faith. And when if you lengthen it a bit more, Shraddaya, it still has connotations of faith. But what does Prabhupada give as Shraddaya? Earnestness. He gives earnestness.
Which is a manifestation of faith.
Exactly. Which makes us understand faith better. So if we want to understand that we should have faith, so if we want to understand what comprises faith, how we understand faith, then looking at Shraddaya, earnestness, now we understand faith in a very different way. if we have faith in Krishna, it will manifest in our earnestness, will manifest in our enthusiasm, will manifest in the way we perform our activities. And that is a manifestation of faith. You see how much deeper it has become because of the way Srila Prabhupada has given the meaning. So that's another example. And you can look at this throughout Bhagavatam. And there's so much to learn when we do it that way. So please, don't leave Bhagavatam. Bury yourself in Bhagavatam. Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a
Hare
wonderful
Krishna.
class. My question is, it all boils down to creating a relationship with Krishna, the dormant relationship,
Reviving it.
reviving
Yes.
it. And the qualities is Bhakta Vatsala, Abhadra Randana, and Swam Akinchana Gochara. You mentioned all of these are very secure. Like if I'm very secure in my sadhana,
Yes.
then I can feel this every time in my like I can feel the blessings, I can count the blessings. But most of the times, because of ignorance or weakness in the sadhana, we feel very anxious. Like even in psychology, there are 4 types of attachment styles, like secure attachment, anxiousness, and avoidant. And so most of the times you're either like anxious, and if you're like falling down, then we become avoidant. You know, we can't even see Krishna. We're just, or we're, some people can even distance themselves from the devotees or not coming to temple. So how do we, like, secure attachment style is really like the goal, but how do we transcend coming from anxious or avoidant?
Are you studying psychology? Are you?
No, comparison.
But you've read about it. Okay, fine. Sometimes psychology complicates matters. Because it's one way to look at it,
Yeah.
you know. But another way to look at it is, Prabhupada uses the word neophyte here, and I think Prabhupada never uses anything accidentally, frivolously. It is always used with purpose, and it's always used to convey a point. Prabhupada says here that the import of the purport actually is that even though we may be neophyte, which means we may be struggling in our devotional service, if we continue with our services to Krishna in the form of Archa Vigraha, he can elevate us from that position of difficulty. So, if we look at the material way of looking at it, that it is the challenge of the mind and the different attachments that we have, then what happens is we try to rationalize what is happening in the challenges that we face in devotional service. But actually we don't have to. We understand that we have been materially conditioned for life after life. It's not surprising that we are struggling. That's how the paradigm shift should be. It is surprising if you make progress, but it is not surprising if you're struggling, because we've been struggling for years, for lives. The problem with us is we come in here and think, immediately I develop wings and go back to Vaikuntha. It won't happen that way. But that is not a source of discouragement, because transcendental knowledge tells us there's a reason why it takes time. But the beauty of devotional service is, even while it is purifying us, it is also inducing devotion in our hearts. So they are happening simultaneously. While purity of heart is coming, bhakti is also developing. Therefore, we should have the faith to understand that, sure, we have lived life in a very different way for life after life. But Krishna is so kind that He's given us a facility to be able to connect with Him in this life. I would rather take that as a positive thing, so that when there are obstacles, I understand why not? There should be obstacles, but obstacles don't make us weaker. Obstacles make us stronger. Isn't that a material slogan anyway? Right? When the going gets tough, the tough gets going.
Yeah.
That's what they say. Even in the spiritual world, unless there are difficulties, how will Krishna be able to understand our faith in Him? Right? I think some famous Greek philosopher said that, a wasted life is a life which is unassessed. If you are not assessed, actually your life is invaluable. If you came and just did whatever you want in devotional service, and then you just walked out and did it whenever you wanted, it will be very arbitrary. But if you take up the path seriously and you are tested by Krishna, it is a sign of progress. It is not a sign of regress. So it's really, it depends on how we see it. Vritasur, right, saw the fact that Indra was blessed by Krishna to win the war. He said, Nanu Esha Vrajas, you have been blessed by the thunderbolt. You have been given the blessings of the thunderbolt made by the bones of Dadichi, which is very powerful, and also by the blessings of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Indra, victory for you is assured. So stop being morose and pick up your mace and fight. Imagine, you are fighting with your enemy, you drop the mace, and the enemy says, hey, you're destined to win. Pick it up and fight. It's a crazy situation. But it happened to Indra. And Indra had the cheek to stand up and feel very happy and say, thank you very much, Vritasur. And then they proceeded to fight. And at the end of the fight, when Vritasur was going to leave his body, the Bhagavatam tells us that it took Indra 365 days to actually sever, right, his head. 365 days of wasting his time. At that time, the Lord was so kind to Vritasur that Vritasur attained liberation. Why? Because of his mood towards devotional service, because of his attitude towards devotional service. He didn't want anything. And for him, it didn't matter whether he was in difficulty or not. He was prepared to lose the battle, but he won the war. And the real war is the war of whether we forget Krishna or we remember Krishna. Whether we accept everything as the hand of Krishna or we reject everything. So it's really up to us. That's our free will. It may be minute, but Krishna consciousness is so wonderful that it gives you a chance to extract your free will. By the way, the one thing that really attracted me to Krishna consciousness in the beginning was that Krishna gives us free will. I learned about the minute years later. But in the beginning, when I was 13, I didn't understand what minute meant. I thought it was minute. And then later on, my mother said, no, it's minute. It means you have very small will. Oh, okay. But I like the fact that Krishna is so kind. He empowers us. He gives us a choice. Do you want to do kirtan or you want to watch TV? Do you want to do this or you want to do that? And he empowers you. You can decide. So for those who are very free-willed and who thinks that, oh, I want to be able to decide, Krishna consciousness gives you that ability to decide. Krishna never interferes with that. But don't blame Krishna if we make the wrong decision. That's on us. Does that help, Prabhu? It helps, Mataji? Thank you. I think time is of the essence, Prabhu. Prashadam is of the essence. We can take this offline, Prabhu. No problems. Thank you so much for your association. I leave tomorrow for Washington, but I think we'll see each other again for morning Bhagavatam. Yeah. If you can, please come. If you can't, you sit there and mentally hear the class and whatever else.
They have to mentally eat prashadam also.
Yes. Then it comes as a package. You get to see it and you go home and mentally eat it. Jai Grantha Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Ananta Kodi Vaishnavrinda ki.